We continue now at the top of Daf Pei Zayin Amid Beis and Meseches Menachos. This is Menachos Daf 87b. On the previous summit, the Gemara brought a brisa which said that according to Rabbi Meir, there were two dry measure isarons in the Beis HaMikdash. Why did they need two? Because they were slightly different. One was machuk, which is a larger leveled one, and the other one was gadish. It was heaped, meaning it was an isaron when one heaped a little bit above the rim. And the brisa now continues and explains machuk with regards to the one that was leveled, slightly larger isaron. Shebo haya moded lechavise kohen gadol. That's the one that was used to measure the flour that was used for the chavisin of the kohen gadol. And the brisa continues, v'chachamim omrim, and the chachamim say, lo hayasham elo isaron echad. There was just one isaron in the Beis HaMikdash. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, v'isaron echad lakeves o echad, and that indicates that there was one isaron. Imkain, if so, matamad lomer isaron. Why does the pasuk say isaron? It says it twice, indicating two of them. That's l'rabos chatzi isaron. That's to include the half isaron measure that was in the Beis HaMikdash. Again, they needed that half isaron because the chavisin of the kohen gadol was brought half in the morning and half in the afternoon. And the Gemara says, Rabbi Meir, now according to Rabbi Meir, chatzi isaron minale, where does he get the chatzi isaron from? What is his source? And the Gemara says to that, nafkalei mi v'isaron, he learns it from the vav in v'isaron. V'rabbanon vav lo darshi, the Rabbanon, they don't darsh in that vav. V'Rabbi Meir, now Rabbi Meir, hi v'isaron echad lakeves o echad, my avidlei, what does Rabbi Meir do with the pasuk of the Rabbanon, the pasuk of v'isaron echad lakeves o echad? And the Gemara says to that, ahu shelo yimdod lo b'shel shlosha lepar, v'lo b'shel shnayim la'ayil. That tells us that one shouldn't use a 3 isaron measure for the bull. You just take 3 of the isaron measures and just add them together. And similarly for the ayil, for the ram, don't use a measure that is 2 esronos. Rather, instead, again, use the isaron measure and use that twice. For Rabbanan, now the Rabbanan, where do they learn that idea out from? Nafke lehumi nikudo. They learn that out from nikudo, means the dot that appears on the top of the term isaron that's in the Torah. The Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, Amar Rabbi Yossi says, Lama nakud vav shebe'emsa isaron. Why is the vav in the middle of isaron? Why does that have a dot on top of it? And which isaron is that has that dot? Shel isaron rishon shel yom tov harishon shel chag. It's the isaron, that first isaron that's mentioned on the first day of yom tov of Sukkot. Why does that have a dot? Shelo yimdod lo b'shel gimel lepar v'lo b'shel shnayim la'ayil. Again, it means to tell us that one shouldn't use a 3 isaron vessel for the mincha that accompanies the bull. One should not use a 2 isaron vessel for the mincha that accompanies the ayil, the ram. And for Rabbi Meir, why doesn't he learn from that dot? Nikudo lo darish. He doesn't darish, and he does not expound that dot upon the term isaron. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots. The Mishnah said, Chatzi isaron, the half isaron measure in the Beis HaMikdash, mahoy meshamish, what was that used for? Shebo hayamoded lechavise kohen gadol. That was used to measure the chavise kohen gadol, which is the mincha of the kohen gadol brought each day, again, half in the morning and half in the afternoon. And the Gemara asks, moded, was that really used to measure the half isaron? Or a mini, but we have a contradiction from the following Mishnah. And this was a Mishnah earlier. It said, Chavise kohen gadol, the chavise kohen gadol, lo hayu boin chatzon. It wasn't brought in halves. Elamevi isaron shalim. Rather, it was brought as an entire isaron at first. V'chotzeyu, and then it was divided. So really, the isaron measure was used. It wasn't the chatzi isaron. And the Gemara continues and answers, Amar Rav Shesha says, my moded nami dekatani. What does it mean when it says moded in the Mishnah? It doesn't literally mean it was measured out with the half isaron measure, but it means mechalik. They used that half isaron in order to divide from the isaron. It started out in the container, in the vessel that was an isaron, and then they used the half isaron in order to divide it, in order to split it into 2 half isarons. And the Gemara continues, Boy minei Rami bar Chama me Rav Chisda. Rami bar Chama asked Rav Chisda the following question: Chatzi isaron l'Rab Meir, the chatzi isaron, the half isaron, according to Rabbi Meir, gadish haya or machak haya? Was it a gadish, meaning again a heaped measure, or was it machak? Was it level? And this question is being asked according to Rabbi Meir, because Rabbi Meir is the one who said there were 2 isaron measures. One of them was heaped and one of them was level. Again, the level one is slightly larger. And so the question is, by the chatzi isaron, where there was only 1 chatzi isaron, what was it? Was it gadish or machak? And the Gemara continues and asks, V'ti boy lach l'Rabbanan. Why not ask the same question according to the Rabbanan, whether the chatzi isaron is gadish or machak? And the Gemara says, l'Rabbanan isurin gufei kami boy l'hu gadish haya or machak haya. For the Rabbanan, who say there's only 1 isaron, so that itself is a question whether that 1 isaron measure is gadish or machak. Again, according to Rabbi Meir, there are 2 isaron measures, but according to the Rabbanan, that would be a question by the isaron itself. And the Gemara continues, Amar Le, he said to him, Rav Chisda responded to Rami Bar Chama, Mid Rabbi Meir Nishma Rabbi Meir. From Rabbi Meir's opinion, we can understand the answer to Rabbi Meir. Umid Rabbi Meir Nishma Rabbanan, and then from that understanding of Rabbi Meir, we can understand what the Rabbanan would say as follows. Mida Amar Rabbi Meir, from the fact that Rabbi Meir says, Isaron Mochuk, that the Isaron was Mochuk, the Isaron was a level Isaron, that's specifically the Isaron that was used for the Chavise Kohen Gadol, so then Chatzi Isaron Nami Mochuk, so therefore the Chatzi Isaron also being used for the Chavise Kohen Gadol is also a level Chatzi Isaron, and so therefore Mida Rabbi Meir Mochuk, from the fact that according to Rabbi Meir it is Mochuk, so the Rabbanan Nami Mochuk, we can answer for the Rabbanan as well, in terms of the Isaron, it is Mochuk, it is level. And the Gemara continues, Boy Minei Rami Bar Chama Me Rav Chisda. Rami Bar Chama asked Rav Chisda the following question, Chavise Kohen Gadol, again with regards to the Chavise Kohen Gadol, the daily mincha of the Kohen Gadol, that was divided into 12 loaves, and 6 of those loaves were brought in the morning and 6 in the afternoon. So bamem mechalkon l'chalo. So how were those loaves divided? Biyad obekli, was it by hand or with a vessel? The idea is that if it was by a vessel, it means that it has to be very precise, exactly, that each loaf is exactly the same. And the Gemara says, Pshita deviyad, it's obvious it was done by hand. The ibekli, because if it was done with a vessel, Tortani yachnis, should he bring a scale into the Beis HaMikdash in order to measure, in order to weigh it precisely? But the Gemara asks, v'yachnis, why not? Why not bring in a scale? And the Gemara continues and says, Kevon devichlolo ksiv, since with regards to scales, it's written in connection with a curse, so lav or achara, that would not be appropriate. And Rashi explains, Kevon devichlolo ksiv, since the scale is mentioned in the context of a curse, it says in the pasuk, ve'ishivu lachmechem b'mishkol, it says they're going to bring back your bread by weight. The connotation over there is that the loaves are going to crumble in the oven, and it's going to force them to use a scale to divide the remaining crumbs, and so that is the curse, so therefore that is not brought into the Beis HaMikdash. And the Gemara continues, Boy Minei Rami Bar Chama Me Rav Chisda. Rami Bar Chama asked Rav Chisda the following question, Shulchan, the Shulchan in the Beis HaMikdash, Ma'u sheyakadesh kemotzim begodesh, is it able to consecrate the kemotzim, that's the fistful of the levona, which is normally placed in spoons? What if it's placed directly in a heap on the Shulchan of the Beis HaMikdash? Is it going to be consecrated in that way, begodesh alo, in its heap? Mida mekadesh lechem kemotzim nami mekadesh. On the one hand, we could say, since the Shulchan is able to be mekadesh the bread, that lechem upon him, so it can also be mekadesh the komets. O dilma, or maybe the chazile mekadesh, that which is fit for it. The bread is supposed to be put on the shulchan, so it's mekadesh. The lo chazile, but what's not meant for it, lo mekadesh, it is not mekadesh. And so the Gemara continues and says, Amar le Rav Chisda said back to him, Eino mekadesh, it's not mekadesh. The Gemara continues, Ini, is that really true? V'amar Rabbi Yochanan, but Rabbi Yochanan said, L'divrei ha'omer tefachayim umechza kofel, according to the one who says that the way the lechem upon him was folded, it was folded at 2.5 tvachim, meaning that's the amount that stuck up. The idea over here is that the lechem hapanim would have to correspond to the size of the table. So it was folded. It's a question how much it was folded. So according to that, so nimsa shulchan mekadesh chamisha asar tefach l'mal, it comes out that the shulchan is able to be mekadesh 15 tefach upwards, because that's how high the lechem hapanim were. And l'divrei homer tfachayim kofel, according to the one who says that it was 2 tefach that were folded, so nimsa shulchan mekadesh yud beis tefach l'mal, it would come out that the shulchan is mekadesh 12 tvachim upwards, because that's how high the lechem upon him were. But in any case, what do you see? You see that the shulchan is mekadesh that which is above it. And the Gemara continues, Amar le, he said back to him, Eino mekadesh li karev. All I meant to say was that it doesn't consecrate in order for something to be offered on the mizbeach. Aval mekadesh li pasel, but it is able to be mekadesh in terms of sanctifying it, in terms of further disqualifications. And Rashi Ksavyat explains, V'amar Rabbi Yochanan beperek shtei halechem, but Rabbi Yochanan says in perek shtei halechem, l'divrei ha'omer, according to the one who says lechem aponim tvachayim umechza, that the lechem aponim, again, it was 2.5 tefach, bi'ama bas chamisha tvachim, that's talking when an amma is measured as 5 tefach, so kofel, it was folded, meaning as follows, shedofen halechem hayakofel tvachayim umechza, the wall of the lechem aponim, it was 2.5 tvachim high, lefi she'orech halechem, because the length of the bread, haya asara tvachim, it was a total of 10 tefach. V'rochav ha'shulchan, but the width of the table, amma bas hei tvachim, it was only an amma, which again, according to this, is 5 tvachim, and so therefore you have bread that is 10 tvachim, but a table that's only 5 tvachim. V'yorech halechem munach b'rochav ha'shulchan, the length of the bread was placed along the width of the table. You have 5 extra tefach. So nimsa shukofel tvachayim umechsa mikan, tvachayim umechsa mikan. It comes out that it's folded 2.5 tefach here, 2.5 tefach there, klape malo upwards, and again the bread was stacked one on top top of the other. So nimtza hashulchan mekadesh lamala tesvav tvachim. It comes out that the shulchan is mekadesh upwards 15 tefach. The sheish chalos hayu b'maracha, because you're stacking 6 of them, and 6 of them at 2.5 tefach each. At 2.5 tefach each, so it's going to be 15 tvachim. Zu al gabe zu l'chol achas shnei tvachim umechza havelhu tesvav tvachim. That comes out to 15 tefach. Again, 2.5 times 6 is going to be 15. 2 times 6 is 12, and then the half is another 3 tefach. That's going to be 15. Ola lamala me'ashulchan u'mekadesh hashulchan es ha'elyon ketachton, and so therefore it is going to be mekadesh upwards. And l'divrei omer de tvachayim ba'ama ba'shisha tvachim, according to the one who says that the tvachayim, that it's 2 tefach, that's talking about where an amma is 6 tefach, so that's why the calculation is slightly different. So nimtza hashulchan, again, it comes out that the shulchan is mekadesh upwards. V'Rabbi Yochanan al karchach b'shar mili ka'amar, so Rabbi Yochanan must be talking about other things, kagon kemotzim de mekadesh lu godesh de shulchan, like the kemotzim that again heaped on the shulchan, it's going to be consecrated de iba lechem, because if we're talking about lechem, atu ad hashta lo yadinan de shulchan mekadesh lu, do we not know that the shulchan is mekadesh the lechem? Of course, the shulchan is mekadesh the lechem, and so the Gemara then answered, aval mekadesh li pasal, it is mekadesh for the purposes of disqualification, meaning it now has sanctity in terms of, let's say, disqualification b'tvul yom, by a tvul yom, that's someone who has some tumah, uviyotzer, if it leaves the proper area, kadosh li pasal, so it does have that holiness that it can become disqualified, ki ilu kadosh bevazichin atzman. The frankincense would have that level of kedusha as if it was sanctified in the bazichin, but it would not get to the level where it could then be burned on the mizbeach. And we will take a look at Rashi as well. Amar lei, Rav Chisda said to Rami Bar Chama, Hoda amino neino mekadesh, when we say that the shulchan is not mekadesh, ma'idalo chazile, what is not fit for it. For example, the levon of the lechem aponim, hainu li karev, that just means in terms of being offered on the mizbeach, shein hakometz miskadesh sham, that the kometz, again, of the levona is not going to be miskadesh over there, won't be consecrated over there. Shadayin yesh lo lekacho b'kli acher, one still has to be mekadesh it in another vessel, kodem sheak tirenu, before he burns it on the mizbeach. Avol mekadesh hakmotzim li pasel. However, it is mekadesh the kamotzim in order that they are disqualified, meaning the kadshi li pasel belino v'yotze, that they can then become disqualified through lina being left overnight or yotze leaving the proper area. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, which now discusses the liquid measures in the Beis HaMikdash. Sheva midos shalach hayu. There were 7 measures of liquid b'mikdash in the Beis HaMikdash, and they were as follows: hin, v'chatzi hin, the hin and the half hin, u'shlishis hin, and the third hin, u'revius hin, and the quarter hin. And then there's the lug, v'chatzi lug. The lug is smaller than the hin. There's the lug and the half lug, u'revius lug, and the quarter lug. Those are the 7 liquid measurements in the Beis HaMikdash. Rabbi Eliezer bar Rabbi Tzadok Omer, Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Rabbi Tzadok, says, Shenosos hayu behin, with regards to the hin, it actually was just one vessel that was a hin, and then there were markings, and the markings indicated ad kan lepar, until here for the bull, the ad kan la'ayil, until here for the ram, ad kan lekeves, until here for the lamb. Again, the idea is it would indicate where the half hin is, where the third of the hin is, and where the quarter of the hin is. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon says, Lo haya sham hin, there was no vessel that measured a hin. V'chi ma haya hin mishamish, because what would it have been used for? There was no use for the hin. And so therefore, according to Rabbi Shimon, now we need to have that 7th liquid measure. And so what was that? Elamida yasera shalug umechza haisasham. There was another liquid measure of a lug and a half that was there. Shabaha yamode leminchas kohen gadol. They used that to measure the oil for the mincha of the kohen gadol, which was lug umechza baboker. That was a lug and a half of oil in the morning, and lug umechza bein harbaim, another lug and a half in the afternoon. And the Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, the sages taught in a brisa, Sheva midos shalach hayu b'mikdash. There were 7 liquid measures in the Beis HaMikdash: revius lug, v'chatzi lug, v'lug, u'revius ahin, u'shlishis ahin, v'chatzi hin, v'hin, divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda lists the same 7 that we had in the Mishnah, but in the other order, starting from the smallest one and then going up to the larger one. Rabbi Meir Omer, Rabbi Meir says, hin, v'chatzi hin, u'shlishis ahin, u'revius ahin, v'lug, v'chatzi lug, u'revius lug. Again, those are the same as Rabbi Yehuda, just listed in the opposite order. The Gemara will discuss. And the Brisa continues. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon says, Lo haya sham hin, there was no hin over there. V'chi ma haya hin mishamish, what purpose would the hin serve? And Rashi Ksav Yad explains, Shenasos hayil hin, again there were markings on the hin. Lo haya sham elohin, there was only the vessel that measured a hin. Uvo hayu simonim misamnos opegimos, and you had again certain indentations, certain markings that showed the half hin, etc. Ad kan lapar, until here is for a bull. That's chatzia hin. The chatzia hin was used for the par, as it says in the pasuk. V'niskeihem chatzi ahin yayin, again that the nesachim for the par is a chatzi ahin of wine, and ad kan la'ayil, until here for the ram, that was shlishis ahin, ad kan lakeves, and then until here for the lamb, that's reviyas ahin, that's a quarter of a hin, as the psukim say. Elamida yisera, rather there was another liquid measure, said the Mishnah, haisa sham lahashlim sheva midos, that was there in order to complete the 7 midos, the 7 liquid measures. Again, that's according to Rabbi Shimon, there was no hin, and so therefore what was the 7th? It was the lugu mechza. And Rashi Ksaviad continues, Chavise Kohen Gadol hayatzarech la gimel lugin shemen. The Chavise Kohen Gadol, the mincha of the Kohen Gadol, needed 3 lug of oil, and that was lugu mechza shacharis v'lugu mechza bein harboyim. It needed a lug and a half in the morning, a lug and a half in the afternoon. Kedam rinon beperak hatcheles, like we say in perak hatcheles. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Peiches Amud Aleph.